Now I would like to invite our special guest at the launch of Fundația Ceata, Dr. Richard Stallman.
First, some requests. If you take a photo of me, please do not post it in Facebook. Facebook is a monstrous surveillance engine. What? Not as much. If you post a photo of someone in Facebook, that gives Facebook one more opportunity to surveil that person. We could discuss whether putting a photo of your friend in Facebook is decent treatment of a friend, but that doesn't affect me personally. Whereas putting a photo of me in Facebook hurts me personally. Please don't do it. And if you take photos of me with a phone and you want to distribute a copy to anyone in any fashion, make sure you have deleted geolocation information from it first. I recommend doing that with photos of anybody whatsoever, but I only make the request for me. Second, if you record this talk, audio or video, and you want to distribute copies, please do so only in the formats that are favorable to free software. Those are OGG Theora and WebM. So no MP anything. Certainly no Flash, and no Real Player, Windows Media Player, or QuickTime. Please, if you distribute it on a website, make sure that people can access it without having to run any non-free JavaScript software. And please put on the recording the license Creative Commons No Derivatives, because this is a presentation of my personal views. Oh, but I started this one already. I don't want to be wasteful. What is this? Is this hot water inside here? This is to make tea. Oh, how nice. I can make tea. So, what is free software? Free software means software that respects your freedom and community. So it's free as in freedom. We're not talking about price here. So to understand the term free software, think of free speech, not free beer. And so in Romanian, you would call it liber. I'm not sure how you say zero price. Gratis. So the point is, it's not programe gratis. That's not the point. Because that's just a detail, not very important ethically. What's important is that we have freedom in our computing, just as it's essential in all other areas of life. So if a program is not free, we call it non-free, proprietary, user-subjugating software. Because a non-free program generates a system of unjust power. There's some seats over there, and there's some seats over there. A non-free program is a system of digital colonization, which keeps the users divided and helpless. Divided because they're forbidden to redistribute copies, and helpless because they don't have the source code, so they can't change it. They can't even study what it really does to them. And often it's designed to do something nasty. So software should all be free. But what I've said is very general. It respects your freedom and community. Let me be more specific. A program is free software if it comes with the 4 essential freedoms. So there are many empty chairs over there. On that side, you can find many. There are a few over here as well. Freedom 0 is the freedom to run the program as you wish. Freedom 1 is the freedom to study the source code and then change it to make the program do your computing as you wish. Freedom 2 is the freedom to help others, to redistribute exact copies of the program when you wish. And freedom 3 is the freedom to contribute to your community. That's the freedom to distribute copies of your modified versions when you wish. So if the program comes with these 4 freedoms adequately, then it's free software because the social system of its distribution and use is an ethical one that respects freedom and community. But if one of these freedoms is missing or insufficient, the program is user-subjugating software because it imposes an unethical social system on its users. In order for these freedoms to be adequate, they must apply to all the activities in life, including business. Now, corporations are not people, and they are not entitled to human rights. However, it's not good for society to let Company A have control over Company B's computing, so Company B ought to have control of its own computing also. And therefore, free software applies to businesses. These issues apply to businesses as well as to individuals. But note that these 4 freedoms are not obligations. You're not required to do any of these things with free software. Free software means you're free to do them if you wish. Thus, with Freedom 0, you're free to run the program as you wish, but it's not required. If you're a masochist, you can run it as you don't wish. You also have the option not to run the program. With Freedom 1, you're free to study the source code and change it, but it's not required. You're also allowed to receive the program and run it right away without looking at anything. And that's the usual case, because we're all busy, you know. With Freedom 2, you're free to make copies and distribute them to others. You could give them away, you could sell them, but it's not required. It's up to you when you do that. We don't say, you must cooperate with all of them. Rather, we insist that you be free to do so. We insist that nobody else say to you, you may not cooperate with them. And with Freedom 3, if you have made a modified version, you're free to distribute copies of it, but it's not a requirement. You can use your copy, your modified version, privately. Then it's private software, which is okay. It's free and it's private. Whether you distribute copies to others is up to you. So, as you can see, the distinction between free and proprietary software, proprietary means non-free, and it's different from private. The distinction is not a technical one. It's not about the features of the program. It's not about how it works. It's not about how the code was written. Those are all technical details. This distinction is an ethical, social, and political distinction, which is why it's so important. The use of a free program in society is development. Every program embodies knowledge. If it's free, that knowledge is available for the users to understand. They can maintain, adapt, and extend the program. They can also use their knowledge in other ways. But the use of a proprietary program in society is not development, it's dependence. Imposed dependence on one particular entity. That is a social problem. If we see proprietary software in use, we should try to put an end to that problem. To write a free program is for release to the public is a contribution to society. How much? That depends what the program does. If it does a lot of useful things, then it's a big contribution. If it does very little and doesn't work well, it's a tiny contribution. But at least if it's free software, it's distributed in such a way that it contributes whatever it has to offer. But to develop a proprietary program is no contribution, it's a power grab. It's an attempt to subjugate others. In social terms, this proprietary program is a trap. If it has attractive features, those are the bait. Paradoxically, convenient features do not make a proprietary program better. They make it more harmful, more damaging. So if you have the choice to develop a proprietary program or do nothing at all, morally speaking, you should do nothing at all, because that way you don't do harm. In real life, you probably have more than those two choices. You have some other options which might be better than both. But when we consider just these two options, never develop a proprietary program. Do nothing instead. At least do no harm. Thus, the goal of the free software movement is that all programs be free so that all their users can be free. But why are these four freedoms essential? Why define free software this way? Each freedom has a reason. Freedom 2, the freedom to help others, the freedom to make and distribute exact copies, is essential on fundamental moral grounds, so you can live an upright, ethical life as a good member of your community. If you use a program without freedom 2, you are in danger of falling into a moral dilemma whenever your good friend says, "That program looks nice, could I have a copy?" At that moment, you will face a choice between two evils. One evil is to give your good friend a copy and violate the license of the program. The other evil is to refuse your good friend a copy and comply with the license of the program. If you are in this dilemma, you ought to choose the lesser evil, which is to give your good friend a copy and violate the license of the program. If you can't avoid doing wrong to somebody or other, it's less bad to do wrong to somebody who deserves it because he has done wrong. The developer, well, first of all, we can assume that your good friend is a good member of your community and normally deserves your cooperation. There may be exceptions, but that's the usual case. By contrast, the developer of the proprietary program has deliberately attacked the social solidarity of your community, which is very bad. So, if you have to do wrong to your good friend or the developer, do it to the developer. However, being the lesser evil does not mean it's good. It's never good to make an agreement and break it. Not even an evil agreement like this one. With an evil agreement, keeping it is worse than breaking it, but still breaking it is not good. And if you give your good friend a copy, what will she have? She will have an unauthorized copy of a proprietary program, and that's a rather nasty thing. almost as nasty as an authorized copy of the same program. It's nasty because it's proprietary. So when you have fully understood this dilemma, what should you really do? You should make sure you never fall into it. Take precautions in advance. Don't risk being in the dilemma. I know 2 ways to avoid it. One is, don't have any friends. That's what the proprietary developers have in mind for you. Instead of friends, you could have Facebook friends. The other method, my method, is reject that program. If you don't have a copy yourself, you can't fall into the dilemma. So that's what I do. If someone offers me a program, no matter how attractive it might be, on the condition that I not share it with you, I say, my conscience does not allow me to accept those evil conditions, therefore I won't use your program, take it out of here. That's what you should say also. You should reject software that denies freedom too. And reject also the propaganda terms that the proprietary developers use to demonize cooperation. For instance, they say copying is theft. Since we're in a school of law, I should point out that that's a lie. Any lawyer should know copying is not theft. And in most cases, it's not even a crime. Even if it is copyright infringement or violating some contract, that's not normally a crime. And they use the word piracy. Well, piracy means attacking ships. And that's very bad, but sharing is good. So we shouldn't call them by the same name. So when people ask me what I think of piracy, I say attacking ships is very bad. And if they ask what I think of movie piracy, I say I liked the first Pirates of the Caribbean, but not the second because that was unfair to parrots. And I like parrots. So you get the point. I look for a funny way of pointedly rejecting their propaganda term. If you follow somebody else in using the enemy's propaganda terms, you're supporting the enemy's propaganda. So teach yourself never to accept, quote, piracy, unquote, as a reference to sharing. If someone asks you, what do you think of software piracy, don't give a serious answer, because that would be endorsing the use of the word, quote, piracy, unquote, to refer to sharing. So that's the reason for freedom too. The freedom to help others, the freedom to make and distribute exact copies when you wish, essential on fundamental moral grounds. But freedom zero, the freedom to run the program as you wish, is essential for a different reason. So you can have control over your own computing. Every user deserves control over his own computing. There are proprietary programs whose licenses restrict even the use of authorized copies. For instance, there's a proprietary program for managing websites whose license forbids using it to publish anything that criticizes the program's developer. In this case, proprietary software literally denies the user's freedom of speech. Well, if you can't even freely use the copy that's supposed to be there for you to use, you don't control your computing. So freedom 0 is essential, but it's not enough, because that's the freedom to either do or not do whatever the code is set up to let you do, which means the developer still controls your computing, not through the license if you have freedom 0, but instead through the code itself. So, to have control of your own computing, you need freedom 1, which is the freedom to study the source code and change it to make the program do your computing as you wish. Now, the source code of the program typically looks sort of like algebra. And if you know how to program, you can understand what that does and you can change it. Whereas programs are often distributed in executable binary form, which even programmers can't understand easily. So that's the distinction. They should make available the source code, which is the form of the program that the developers use to understand what they're doing and to write it. They should not make it any harder for you to understand than it is for them. And they should not make it any harder for you to change it than it is for them. Of course, it's hard work. That they can't get rid of, but that's not anybody's fault. That's just the way it is. But they must not make it harder for you than it is for them. Now, this freedom includes having the option to actually install and run your version. Nowadays, many devices are built such that they will only run versions signed by the developer. And if you have the source code and you change it, the machine will refuse to run your version. Well, that's not having the freedom to change how the program works. So that doesn't qualify as freedom 1. If they can make a new version that'll run in your computer, you must be allowed to run your version in your computer. That's what it means to have the freedom to change the program so it does your computing the way you wish. Now, if you don't have freedom 1, you can't even tell what the program really does. And often proprietary programs have malicious functionalities that do things such as spy on the user, restrict the user. There are even backdoors that receive commands remotely to do something perhaps nasty to the user without asking permission. There are many rare dangers in life. Today, you might get hit by a car, but you probably won't. It's a rare danger. And there, of course, are thousands of rare dangers in life. But mostly we go through our lives and these things don't happen to us. Being the victim of proprietary malware is not a rare danger. It's the usual case. Almost everyone who is using proprietary software is the victim of malicious functionalities. Let me prove this with a list of examples. One proprietary package that has all 3 kinds of malicious functionality that you may have heard of is called Microsoft Windows. There are known surveillance features in Microsoft Windows. There are digital handcuffs, the functionalities that restrict what users can do with the data they have in their machine. These, of course, can't be hidden. The users can tell that the system refuses to do these things. There are also known backdoors. So, Windows is malware, literally. Malware means software designed to hurt the user. Windows is malware. But it's even worse, because one of these backdoors gives Microsoft, or anyone else that knows the secret for how to use it, the power to remotely install software changes, which means that any malicious functionality that is not in Windows today could be remotely installed tomorrow. This is a universal backdoor because it can be used to do absolutely anything. It's in the same sense that a computer is a universal machine. It can be programmed to do anything computable. So, Windows is universal malware. But it's not alone. macOS is malware too. It has digital handcuffs, the functionalities to restrict people. These are also known as DRM, Digital Restrictions Management. The software in the iThings, Apple's newer and monstrous products, is much worse. People have found several surveillance features. They have the tightest digital handcuffs ever known in general purpose computing. Apple was the pioneer in seizing control over users' installation of application programs. By the way, there are some seats over there and also over there. If you'd like to sit down, don't be shy. He left instead. This had previously been known in game consoles, but Apple was the first to take this increased power over users of general purpose computers, in effect converting their products into jails for the users. And who said this? The users themselves, because when they find ways to break those particular handcuffs, they call it jailbreaking, which means escaping from jail, recognizing that those products are designed to be jails. And they have an acknowledged backdoor. So the software in the iThings is malware. Then there's Flash Player, which has a surveillance feature and digital handcuffs. Flash Player is gratis, but it's not Liber. And you can see this in the fact that it has malicious features and the users can't remove them. So, is it of any importance at all that Flash Player is gratis? It means that Adobe does not require users to pay to be abused. Then there's Angry Birds. Angry Birds is spyware. It collects location information. Many apps for smartphones are spyware, or in other ways, malicious. Then there is the PlayStation 3. As I said, the feature of restricting what programs people can run existed in game consoles first, and there is a lot of digital handcuff in the PlayStation 3. Somebody found a way to jailbreak it and install other software, and Sony sent the police after him, which is why we call for a total boycott of Sony, and there are boycott Sony stickers, although they're turned upside down so you can't see what they say. And then there's the Amazon swindle, an e-reader that swindles readers out of the traditional freedoms of readers of books. For instance, there's the freedom to acquire a book anonymously, paying cash, which is the way I buy books. I won't identify myself to a database when I buy a book. But you can't do that with the swindle. Amazon doesn't accept cash. Then there's the freedom to give the book to somebody else after you read it, or lend it to various friends, or sell it to a used bookstore. The Amazon abolishes these freedoms for the swindle with digital handcuffs, together with contracts that say that you can't own a book. Amazon does not respect private property. Amazon says all of your books belong to us. And then there's the freedom to keep the book as long as you wish, which Amazon eliminates with a back door. We only know about this back door by observation. We don't know all the things it can do. We know it can be used to remotely erase books. Because in 2009, Amazon used it to remotely erase thousands of copies of a particular book. These were authorized copies until that day. An Orwellian act. And what was the book? It was 1984 by George Orwell. A book that presents a totalitarian state whose crimes against humanity began with destroying the books it didn't like. So everyone should read this book, 1984, but not in the swindle. Now, the official name of that product is the Kindle. Kindle means to start a fire, which I suppose is meant to suggest that the real purpose of that product is virtual book burning of our books, except that they say that the books are not ours in the first place. And then there are nearly all portable phones. Portable phones are full of non-free software. Well, a few of them have only a little non-free software, but there's none that's made now that can run without non-free software. And in general, that non-free software has a surveillance feature and a back door. The surveillance feature transmits the location frequently, and the user can't stop it. It'll transmit the location in response to a remote command. The back door is universal. It allows remote installation of software changes. And this has been used to convert portable phones into listening devices that transmit all the conversation in the room. You don't have to talk into the microphone. It can hear you if it's over there. And it transmits all the time, even when it appears to be switched off. So, you've heard of software that has bugs. This software is a bug. Well, these examples I've just mentioned are used by almost everybody that uses proprietary software uses at least one of these. And thus I've proved that almost all users of proprietary software are the victims of malicious functionalities in it. But these are just a few examples. What about all the other non-free programs? We don't know if they're malware. It's hard to find out because we don't have their source code. So effectively, every program without Freedom 1 is just trust us software. It demands blind faith. The developer says, we're a big corporation. Of course you can trust a corporation. No corporation ever mistreated the public. But I'm sure there are some non-free programs whose developers were honest and did not put in any malicious functionalities. We can't tell which ones they are, but I'm sure there are some. What can we say about them? Well, their developers are humans, so they make mistakes. The code of those programs has bugs. because every non-trivial program has bugs. You can't avoid it. But the user of a program without freedom 1 is just as helpless against an accidental bug as against an intentional malicious functionality. If you use a program without freedom 1, you're a prisoner of the code. We free software developers are human too. We also make mistakes. Our free programs have bugs too, because every non-trivial program has bugs. But if you find a bug in our free code or anything in the code you don't like, you're free to change it because we did not make you a prisoner. We can't be perfect. We can respect your freedom. Thus, freedom 1 is essential. But it's not enough, because that's the freedom to personally study and change the source code, or to do so within one organization. Well, that's not enough, because, first of all, most users don't know how to program. They don't know how to exercise freedom 1. But even for programmers like me, freedom 1 is not enough. The reason is each one of us is busy doing certain things. Nobody has time to study and take care of all the programs she uses. Besides, every computer user nowadays will use thousands of programs, and no one person can possibly study and master all that source code or personally write all the changes she might wish. This is more work than one human being can do. So the only way we can have fully effectively control over our computing is to do it collaborating, working together. And for this we need freedom 3. Freedom 3 gives us collective control over our computing. It means that any group of people can work together, adapting a version of the program to do what they wish. And because with freedom 3, they can send their changed versions back and forth to each other. And then when they're happy with it, they can offer it to the public as well. And that way, all those users that don't know how to program can get this improved version and use it if they wish. Without freedom 3, yes, each one of us would be free to make that change. But what a waste it would be to have to write the same change millions of times, and the people who don't know how would be left out completely. So freedom 3 is essential. And all users get the benefit of these 4 freedoms. Every user can exercise freedom 0 and freedom 2 to run the program as you wish and redistribute exact copies, because these don't require programming. Freedoms 1 and 3 to study and change the source code and then optionally distribute copies of your modified version, these entail programming. So the only users that can do this are the ones that know how to do this. But everyone gets the benefit of living in a society where we have these freedoms, because when other people, those who do know how to program, make modified versions and distribute them, everybody gets to use them if we wish. So we get the benefit of living in a society where people have these freedoms. And you can also indirectly take advantage of freedom 1 and 3. Even if you don't know how to do it yourself, you can convince somebody else to do it for you. If you want to change in a program, let's assume you're not a programmer, you don't know how to do it yourself. Well, what then? If the program is proprietary, all you can do is beg the developer, please, almighty developer, make this change for me. But if it's free software, well, maybe your cousin's a programmer. You can convince your cousin to make the change for you. Or maybe not. Maybe you have to pay a programmer to make the change for you. But you can do it. Just as if you want a change in your house and you don't know how to do carpentry and plumbing, There are people whose profession or trade is that you pay them to do it for you. And lots of people take advantage of this and hire carpenters and plumbers to do work on their houses. And you can likewise hire a programmer to do work on your program, if it's free software, because then it lets you. You make a contract with the programmer you chose, and this is a free market, no barriers to entry. Lots of people have the skill that's needed so they can enter this market. Well, you give a copy to that programmer of the program you are running. That way you exercise your freedom number 2. Then the programmer studies the code and changes it, and then exercising freedom 1, and then distributes a copy to you, exercising his freedom number 3. And then, if you decide it's good enough to use and you use it, you pay him. And this is how a substantial part of free software business works. And the 4 freedoms together give us democracy. A free program develops democratically under the control of its users, because every user is free to participate in society's decision about the future of that program, which is simply the sum total of the decisions made by all the various users of the program. By contrast, a proprietary program develops under the dictatorship of its owner, and then functions as an instrument of power over the users. With software, there are just 2 possibilities. Either the users control the program, or the program controls the users. The first case is free software. The 4 freedoms are essential because those are the freedoms that the users need to fully have control over the program and the computing they do with it. They need individual control and collective control. And the freedoms 0 and 1 give individual control. With freedoms 2 and 3, we have also collective control. But if the users don't have these freedoms, then they don't control the program, so the program controls the users, and the owner controls the program, and thus through it, the owner exercises power over the users. And this non-free program is simply an instrument of power. And the owner typically is fully aware of the power that it has over the users, and thus feels the temptation to put in malicious features. This is why malicious features are so common in proprietary software. Systematically, the owners feel the temptation and they give into it, because they're typically corporations, in other words, psychopaths by structure. Whereas with free software, nobody has power over anybody, and thus the developers usually don't face the same kind of temptation. And that's why malicious functionalities are rare in free software. So, society has a choice to make. On one side, we have individual freedom, social solidarity, and democracy. On the other, we have the dictatorship of the software owner over the users. Society must reject proprietary software and choose free software. Thus, the ultimate goal of the free software movement is the liberation of cyberspace and all its inhabitants. We invite you to escape from proprietary software and come live with us in the free world that we have built. Just a second, it's time for more tea. I started the free software movement in 1983. I wanted to make it possible to use a computer and have freedom. That was impossible at the time, because the computer won't really do anything for you without an operating system installed. And all the operating systems for the modern computers of that time were proprietary. So, for instance, if you bought a new PC, in order to make it useful, you needed to have a proprietary operating system installed, and there went your freedom. So how could I change that? I was one man without much money, without much fame, and few people agreed with me. So I didn't think I could change much with an ordinary political movement where you protest in the street and you send letters to officials. And besides, I had no experience doing that. I was not a political organizer. I was an operating system developer. But as an operating system developer, that meant there was another way I could achieve the same goal. All I had to do was write an operating system. Then, as the author, I could legally make it free software. And then, everyone would be able to run computers in freedom by using my system. In other words, I could rescue some people from the injustice of proprietary software by doing technical work in my own field. I was aware of the injustice of proprietary software, which most people did not recognize as an injustice. I had the skill necessary to give people an escape route from this injustice, and it looked like nobody was going to do it if not me. That meant I had been elected by circumstances to do this job. It was my duty. It's as if you see somebody drowning and you know how to swim and there's no one else around and it's not Bush. Then you have a moral duty to save this person. Well, perhaps that statement is too strong. Perhaps we could identify some other people, like Bush's torturers and the people who, like Obama, who protect Bush's torturers, and the other people in various countries, wasn't Romania one of them, who cooperated with CIA kidnapping and torture? Well, this could be a big list of people whom we perhaps shouldn't, about whom I should perhaps not affirm a moral duty to save them. Fortunately, I don't need to make this list because I don't know how to swim. But in the real instance in my life, the work to be done was not swimming, it was writing lots of code, and I knew how to do that. So I decided to develop an operating system that would be totally free software. Every line would be free software. The point is, if there's any piece of the system which is non-free, that's a part of you which has chains. So in order for the system to respect your freedom, every piece must be free software. So then I decided to recruit others to help write it, to finish it sooner. Then I decided to make it a Unix-like operating system. That is, it would look and work just like the Unix system. Unix was a proprietary operating system with some technical advantages, and it was widely used. By making my system compatible with Unix, I would make it easy for lots of people to switch to it because they would already know how to use it. And then I gave it a name which is a joke. The name of the system is GNU, G-N-U. And this is a joke because it's a recursive acronym. GNU stands for GNU's Not Unix. Of course, we programmers love jokes involving recursion, but actually there's another meaning to this. Recursive acronyms like this one were the customary way in my community to give credit in the case where you made a program similar to some existing program. So by calling it GNU's not Unix, I was giving credit to the ideas I would get from Unix, but also expressing the most important thing about this system, namely, it's not Unix. Unix was proprietary software. You couldn't possibly use Unix and have freedom. In order to make a system that could respect your freedom, we would have to rewrite every piece from zero. We couldn't use any of the code of Unix. That would have been illegal, or else it would have meant the system was not free and it would fail to do its job. Now, the word GNU is an even better joke than you might think. Well, first of all, in order to be a joke, it needs two meanings. Well, GNU's not Unix is one meaning, but there has to be a second meaning. Fortunately, that is a word. It's the name of an animal that lives in Africa. And if you watch wild animal programs, you've probably seen a bunch of GNUs. But actually, though, the word GNU is the most humor-charged word in the English language, because according to the dictionary, it's pronounced new. So every time you want to write the word new, you can spell it GNU and you've got a joke. Perhaps not a very good joke, but there are lots of them. So we have been taught to associate this word with laughter. However, when it's the name of our system, please do not follow the dictionary. If you say the new operating system, you'll get people confused. You see, we've been working on it since January 1984, which is over 29 years. And we've been using it for over 20 years, so it's not new anymore. But it still is GNU and will always be GNU. The other erroneous pronunciation that you've probably heard that you should avoid using sounds like Linux. It's amazing, but most of the time when people talk about the GNU system, they erroneously call it Linux. This is a confusion that started in 1992. At that point, we had almost all of the necessary pieces for the GNU system, but one major essential component was still missing. That component was the kernel. The kernel of an operating system is the component that allocates the machine's resources to all the other programs. Now, we developed a kernel, but it was too ambitious a project. I chose an elegant design. I didn't write it. We hired a person to write it. And it took 6 years to have a test version. It works, but it doesn't work all that well, so mostly people don't use it. Mostly they use the kernel Linux. Linux was started in 1991 by Mr. Torvalds as proprietary software. Its license was not free because it was too restrictive. It didn't fully give you the 4 freedoms. However, in '92, he changed the license, and he adopted the GNU General Public License, which is a free software license that I had written for use as the license of GNU programs. But I had designed it so anyone else could release a program under that same license. So that's what Torvalds did in 1992. And when he liberated Linux, at that point, the combination of Linux plus the various big and small pieces of the GNU system made a complete free operating system, which was basically GNU, but also contained Linux. So it was the GNU plus Linux system, if you want to be fair. However, the people who combined them, since we still thought that our kernel would be working any week now, we were not at first interested in Linux. So other people put Linux together with the various components of GNU, and those people were focused so much on this one component Linux that they started referring to the whole thing as a Linux system, essentially talking about something that was mainly our work and giving us none of the credit, which is not nice. So when you talk about the system, please call it GNU plus Linux. Please give us equal mention. The GNU project is the principal developer of the system. There are many other contributors, of course, more than you could mention, but you shouldn't leave out the principal developer. Now, this error in naming has real practical effects today. The problem is that lots of people think that the system was started by Mr. Torvalds, that it comes from his vision of life, and that it exists thanks to his ideas. So they tend to admire him and follow his ideas and ignore and despise ours. And what are his ideas? Well, he doesn't believe that you deserve freedom in your computing. He doesn't believe he deserves freedom in his computing. He doesn't think it's important. He says that he's happy to use non-free software as long as it's powerful and reliable. And as far as I know, he hasn't confronted the fact that it's likely to be malicious. So he has a right to his views. He has a right to promote his views. He's not entitled to cite our work that we did for the sake of your freedom as if it were his work in support of his opposition to our motives for doing this work. But that's exactly what happens when people think the system is Linux. So please help make people aware of what our campaign for freedom has given them by calling the system GNU plus Linux or GNU/Linux.